What is up, boys? Today we're going to be doing a Steve matchup chart, which I'm pretty excited for because Steve is my highest rated character on Elite Smash, just above my Inkling actually, who used to be my main. It's within the top 50,000, I'm pretty sure. Definitely within top 100,000. So let's get right to it. So Bayonetta is a pretty neutral matchup in my opinion. Bayonetta has the ability to combo Steve pretty hard, but at the same time, Steve's up tilt can work pretty well if Bayo hits your shield or even just side Bs above you. They both have their pros and their cons in this matchup. Next we have Bowser, and I would say that Bowser is a pretty favorable matchup because he's heavy, he can get comboed pretty hard. Granted, his up B out of shield is pretty tough, but if you know that he's going to be shielded, you can either minecart and pick him up, or you can just grab him, so you can condition him into being able to shield. Next we're looking at Bowser Jr. Bowser Jr.'s mobility with his clown cart makes this matchup unbearable. It is ridiculous how hard I think it is. Every time I run into a Bowser Jr., I don't know if I've beaten the Bowser Jr. with Steve, straight up. Because Bowser Jr. has the ability to camp. So I noticed you were watching this video. You're liking what you're seeing, make sure you hit that like and subscribe. But I would also like to clarify a few points here. I think that Steve is upper mid tier. I don't think Steve is a bad character, even though Steve does bad in a lot of matchups. But yeah, hit that like button at least, please. If you're finding this useful, thank you. Just to clarify, I played Inkling in offline tournaments, but I really haven't played Steve because of, what's going on in the world right about now. But yeah, once we do, maybe I'll create a new tier list. Steve's tumble animation is not very good if your goal is to not get hit. So, especially when the combos are vertical. Captain Falcon is a... Where would I put Captain Falcon? Falcon's a favorable matchup. It's not a winning by any means. Falcon kind of struggles unless you're shielding a lot, in which case Falcon can get some grabs, but otherwise up tilt's a great move. If you know he's gonna raptor boost, you can just grab him, and overall it works out pretty well for you. Next we have Chrom. Chrom is slightly unfavorable because of his speed and his ability to get in versus Chrom. And let me note that this is all online. I haven't really had the opportunity to play much offline with Steve, but Chrom's able to run in and jab and forward air, and it's hard for Steve to deal with. Not impossible, but it's pretty hard. Cloud is like Chrom, just his moves feel slightly slower. He doesn't have as fast of burst options. Corrin is slightly unfavorable. It's another. So Dark Pit's combos work really well on Steve, but I'm still gonna have to put it in neutral because Steve is able to combo Dark Pit right back and can kind of edge guard him pretty hard. And that's why it's gonna have to be neutral versus unfavorable. Okay, so we're gonna do Donkey Kong before we do Diddy Kong, and this is a favorable matchup in my opinion. Donkey Kong has to rely on throws because he can't hit Steve's shield without getting jabbed or up tilted or up smashed, and that's just really difficult. And so if you know he has to go for a grab, you can just throw out minecart. You can do a lot of things that just kind of stop what he wants to do. I wouldn't say it's quite winning, but, it's a very good matchup still. Diddy Kong, like some of these other characters, can combo Steve pretty well, especially in the upwards direction. It can be kind of tricky and difficult to deal with, so that's why I'm putting him in unfavorable. A lot of characters with good mobility and burst options, like Monkey Flip, are kind of hard to deal with in general. Dr. Mario, well, you know, Steve has a lot of options for low tiers. It's a pretty favorable matchup. Edge guarding, all that stuff. Duck Hunt is another one of those unfavorable matchups because, well, he has a bunch of ranged moves that kind of can wall out Steve. And while Steve does like to mine and does like to stay back, he also needs to get in to win, which a lot of these characters on this end just will outrange Steve in a couple of categories. Falco then, yeah, he's also unfavorable. The laser, kind of annoying when you're trying to mine. Granted, you can set up a wall which allows you to mine around him, around his lasers, but he can combo Steve pretty hard still. And a lot of characters with reflectors also make it so you cannot use down air, which is unfortunate, and also down smash gets reflected, and you just kind of get screwed over in general if they have a reflector in a lot of cases. Actually, no, Fox is a lot less combo heavy and he's a lot lighter and he dies earlier, but you can't use down air, which is annoying. But he still gets comboed kind of hard because he's a fast faller. Overall, I would say that's probably it's a neutral matchup. Ganondorf is, like, you know, in most matchups a pretty favorable matchup for Steve. Now, Steve can kind of struggle to get in on Ganondorf a little bit because of the big range of his sword, but Ganondorf really cannot stop you from mining, and then Minecart is a pretty useful tool to smack around a Ganondorf in this matchup. Greninja has some decent combo tools, and it can be pretty tricky to get around and work around all that. But in the end, Greninja also kind of falls a little bit faster than normal, so you can combo him pretty hard too. And it's kind of a read-based matchup where you have to read what they're doing and call them out a little bit, but it's doable. Ice Climbers. Well, Steve doesn't have a ton of tools to deal with the Ice Climbers. Against the Ice Climbers, you want to camp them out, which is all great, but when their hammers are, you know, as strong as Diamond about and just outrange it in general, it's really hard to deal with. And of course they have side B and all of these moves to kind of work around it. I just have not had very good luck in that matchup right there. Ike is pretty losing if they're a competent player. I played against a couple of Ikes online, and the range of that sword is incredible. Now, Incineroar is obviously favorable, but, you know, I think we can put it into winning. Incineroar gets edge guarded hard by Steve. He's not really able to get it except maybe with side B, and if you're prepared for that, you can just dash back and minecart, and Incineroar loses to Steve is what I'm trying to say. Inkling. Ooh, this is a fun one. Let's see, how does Inkling do? Honestly, I haven't played a lot of Inklings as Steve, but I played a lot of Steves as Inkling, and it is pretty bad because Inkling can just get in and kind of mess Steve up. Minecart isn't as easy to deal with as it is in with some matchups for Inkling, or I guess Steve can use Minecart a little bit more because back air doesn't always outrange it, which is annoying for Inkling and good for Steve in that case, but at the same time, Inkling can make Steve's life a living hell. It's pretty bad. Isabelle slightly outranges Steve with all of her moves, and Steve, like we've mentioned earlier, isn't the fastest character in the world, so it's not the easiest for Steve to get in against Isabelle or Villager. Now, I know that when the character came out, and I don't know if Hungrybox still holds this opinion, that Hungrybox said that this was a winning matchup for Puff, but no. I would say it's a pretty neutral matchup. If Puff's above you, you're able to up smash. If Puff's in front of you, you can kind of just jab and you'll clank with a bunch of their stuff. If they hit your shield, you have a couple of options to deal with them. They die really early to Diamond, they die really early to charged Minecart, so overall, it's not that bad of a matchup. I think against the Shotos and against Terry, I don't know why I included Terry. I guess he's a different character altogether, but against both of the Shotos, so let's grab Ryu. Just that Steve has a pretty favorable matchup. He's got a couple of moves that can deal with focus. Like up smash is really good if they're trying to land with focus because it's a multi-hit move and they can't just focus out of it. They get comboed hard. Steve has some decent out of shields if you're able to crafting tool cancel your shield. And it works pretty well in general. It's a good matchup it's a good matchup for Steve. DDD is a neutral matchup as well. DDD is able to kind of wall out Steve in a lot of cases, but at the same time, Steve can kind of reflect his Gordo pretty easily, and as long as he's able to mine, he's able to do stuff. King K. Rool's tricky. He is beatable, but he is able to keep Steve out. And with he's able to keep Steve out with his cannon and with his crown, and it is a rough time. Plus, Steve's recovery isn't the best, and if you get called out for going high, you will die. I just hate Kirby in general. It's a neutral matchup. It's nothing special. Steve can kind of combo Kirby. Kirby gets to do Kirby stuff onto Steve really well because of the tumble animation sucking for Steve. But overall, it's Kirby. Kirby doesn't beat a lot of characters, but I don't think Kirby loses in this matchup. Link isn't quite as good against Steve as young Link, because Link's moves are a little bit slower, and you're able to set up a wall and mine pretty well and get in a little bit better, but he's still able to wall Steve out, and he's got really strong moves that can kill pretty early. So if you're not able to get Diamond, it's very, very tough. Little Mac loses, like against most characters, and Steve is no exception. Steve can kind of wall him out, throw him off stage, it's down tilt, and he just dies. It's great. Lucario is an interesting one if you aren't able to get Diamond. It can get kind of rough if Lucario is able to stack aura, but overall you should be able to kill him pretty easily with a lot of your options. Like any forward smash will kill. Down smash kills. Obviously we aren't using down smash, but down air, every move is just so strong that you should not lose to Lucario, because he shouldn't be able to stack up aura too high. Lucas is able to create a little bit of a wall. It's not too significant of a wall. You can kind of get in against it. Depends on how campy the Lucas is playing. It's probably a neutral matchup if you're not playing against a campy Lucas, but played optimally, Lucas will camp you out and you'll be slightly disadvantaged, but you can still win. Next, we are looking at Lucina. Well, Lucina is a pretty good character. Lucina doesn't really lose any matchup, as we know that. Lucina can kind of outrange Steve, and it can be pretty tricky. Lucina also, which brings it from unfavorable to losing, can edgeguard Steve pretty well. I wouldn't say it's lost, but it is a hard matchup to win. Now, Luigi is a pretty favorable matchup. You can fall out of a lot of Luigi's combos pretty well, actually due to the tumble animation from my experience. But at the same time, can't hit Luigi's shield very well, but you can edgeguard him because of his linear recovery with blocks, which is great. Down smash, down tilt, they all work great. Down tilt is a very useful move. Mario is also in this realm of favorable. Actually, Mario's a neutral. I haven't played a lot of good Marios, I guess is why I was putting him in favorable. But Mario is able to hit a lot of his combos pretty well on Steve, as he normally is. But Steve is also able to combo Mario equally well. Marth is honestly the exact same as Lucina. I don't care if people say that Marth is worse. It doesn't make a difference here. Next, we're looking at Mega Man. A good Mega Man will win this matchup. That you really should not be able to get. Yeah, a good Mega Man will win this matchup. As much as you want to mine, the second you try to get in, you just don't have the mobility to. Mega Man can just kind of do his campy thing. Another character, for example, that kind of just really out camps you is Me Gunner. Me Gunner screws with Steve. There is nothing you can do if they choose the right B moves. Like, you cannot get in. And it is the most toxic play. Like, I would play against any Sonic in the world over some of these Me Gunners, but you simply cannot get in. Like, yeah, you might take a stock or two, but you will have no fun doing it, and you're still going to lose. You will not win. Next, we're looking at Meta Knight. Meta Knight's pretty fast. He's got a bunch of burst options. He can run away pretty well, and he can also edge guard Steve decently, which is why I'm putting him at unfavorable. Mewtwo gets comboed hard, is light, but is also strong. However, I do have to say, since Mewtwo's tall and can get up smashed really easily, it's pretty favorable for Steve, because up smash kills Mewtwo ridiculously early. Me Brawler is kind of in the same vein as all of these fighting characters, where he has to get in and punch you, to which you can respond very well to that. You also have a couple of burst options that are better than most of his, and overall it's not that bad. Me Swordsman, my guess though is that it's neutral. Like, just straight up, he's a worse swordsman than a lot of the unfavorable ones. He's gonna end up in neutral. Sorry, I don't have better information for you. Game and Watch is, I would say, an unfavorable matchup. A lot of these guys, like I said, with reflectors will kind of mess you up if you are Steve. And Game & Watch has pretty good frame data, while Steve does too. It's not like very unfavorable, it's kind of neutral. I would probably go Steve over Inkling in the Game & Watch matchup, personally, but it's manageable. It's just a little bit harder because of Game & Watch's good frame data. Ness is in the same area as Lucas, where he can camp you out. He can also get in. You can try to build a wall, but he can PK Thunder and get around it. So it can be tricky depending on the stage, and it's rough. Next, we look at Olimar. Olimar is like these campy characters, except a lot of his moves don't deal stun or knockback, so you can kind of ignore it and still get like an F smash. Obviously, you're not going to be throwing out F smashes a whole ton, but Olimar can struggle against Steve because Steve does kill early, like Olimar is able to put on damage. Now, strangely enough, Pac-Man I don't think is a losing matchup. I don't think that Pac-Man really has the tools to camp out Steve. Pac-Man's bonus fruit, none of them really mess with Steve. I mean, maybe Bell does, like Bell does in any matchup, but he's not able to camp out Steve, and Steve can still get in. Hydrant isn't that big of an issue. Usually an F smash can get rid of it. There's just a lot you can actually do in that matchup that makes it not that bad. Palutena, well, yeah, I mean, if it's a good Palutena, you're not beating that. Sorry, I'll put it in unfavorable, but like a bad unfavorable. Like, you are not having fun with this one unfavorable, because it's Palutena. Best character in the game. Changed my mind. Peach. Well, I mean, online, it's favorable, but you know what? We'll say it's neutral, because like, good Peaches are hard to come by. Online, it's kind of rough, or it's kind of easy, but at the same time, if they're floating and they're coming in with a forward air or something like that, or a back air, and they don't drift back after, up smash. They do drift back after, forward smash. Depending on if they're landing or not, and if not, then you just back up and mine, and it's not that bad. Pichu just dies to like diamond so well, so easily, that I have to put it in favorable. I'm sorry, that's the reason. It's not a ton. Of course, Steve gets comboed, but yeah, it's rough. Well, it's Pikachu. I mean, what do you do against a Pikachu? They can camp you out with T-Jolts, and then they can also combo you. And they're really short, so they're harder to hit with things like minecart, like an aerial minecart. The good old PP. Piranha Plant is your average Piranha Plant matchup. Their neutral B is kind of hard to deal with, but besides that, it's not too bad. You can get kind of camped out, but at the same time, you can also edge guard pretty well with down tilt, stuff like that. So Pit, if you made it to this point, see Dark Pit. Unless I said I was going to talk about... Yeah, Pit's combos work well. It's everything that I said for Dark Pit, same thing goes here. So Trainer, honestly, in my opinion, isn't that bad. I think that Squirtle can get messed up by Steve. I think that Ivysaur has the best matchup against Steve, and I think Charizard also kind of gets messed up by Steve. Both Squirtle dies early and can get comboed. Charizard just gets comboed hard. Ivysaur at least has Razor Leaf to kind of camp out Steve, and Vine Whips also have a decent amount of range, and so that's why I'm putting PT at neutral. Because Ivysaur does pretty well, and you have the versatility of the other characters to do what you want. Now, the Belmonts. Ooh, how do you beat the Belmonts? Well, the short answer is you don't. Because of all of the camping tools they have, you will not be able to get in. I am sorry. And of course, someone in the comments might be like, oh, you know, if you do this... No. Minecart's not going to work. Because Minecart gets beaten out by Axe. No, it's not Cross. Whatever the up or the neutral B is. No, you just don't get in. You just lose. It's not a good matchup. Ridley. Ridley's a neutral matchup in my opinion. Ridley's able to do Ridley things to Steve. Can kind of outrange Steve, but then also gets comboed hard. So it really depends on how much you can avoid getting hit. So Rob can get comboed hard, which is the only thing that saves us from a losing matchup, or from a lost matchup, and puts it into losing. Because Rob's gyro and his laser camp you out like no other. However, if you're able to mine for materials, you can get your standard combos and get Rob to 70 real easily. In which case you can F smash him maybe at 100 and he dies with Diamond from half stage. Alright, Robin is another losing / unfavorable matchup because of Robin's ability to camp. I'll put Robin in unfavorable because Robin doesn't quite have what a couple of these other characters do, such as a massive sword or really good neutral, but Robin has the projectile tools to kind of camp out Steve. Rosalina and Luma beat Steve because Steve isn't able to deal with Luma very well. Of course, if you kill Luma, Rosalina kind of can just run away, and of course you can mine during that time, but there's not much you can do. And then once Luma gets back, you have to work around Luma again, and it's not the easiest matchup in the world. Picture for a second Chrom, but Chrom that kills you at 50. Now that is why Roy is going here, plus he has better recovery, of course. He's just difficult to deal with, really fast, can get in really easily. So Samus is similar to Me Gunner in the sense that Samus has a couple of tools for keeping you out. I don't think it's quite as bad of a matchup because Me Gunner's tools come out just a little bit faster from what I've been able to see. However, Samus can just still camp you out, and if they're playing lame, well, you're not going to have a lot of fun. Sheik just doesn't, especially online, just doesn't kill early enough to make this a good matchup. Now, of course, you can get comboed pretty hard, but at the same time, they're dying at 70 and you're dying at 150. So it's not very good for Sheik. I don't really know if I need to explain this one, but Sword go and Steve Sword go. Snake, not like Snake can kind of wall you out, which is the only reason I'll put it at unfavorable, but Snake can get comboed hard, and honestly, Nikita isn't that great at edge guarding Steve if you know what you're doing. Next we have Sonic. I think that Sonic, if Sonic plays Sonic's game style, you're able to mine up and you can still deal with Sonic. If he's homing attacking, up smash is a great tool for dealing with that because normally it'll go above just run straight into the up smash. However, Sonic, obviously, if Sonic gets a lead, Sonic will not be touched for the rest of the game. Toon Link is pretty similar to regular Link in that he's got some projectiles that can keep you out, but they're not quite as oppressive as they need to be to fit into one of these other categories. You can still get in a little bit, and Toon Link has to rely on getting in because projectiles are slower. Villager is kind of the same as Toon Link. They have slow projectiles, can kind of wall you out, but at the same time can get edge guard, and there's a couple things you can do against a Villager. Wii Fit Trainer once again walls you out, but a little bit more like Samus than like these two right here. Plus, Wii Fit Trainer's got some decent moves in neutral as well. Wolf can get comboed pretty hard, but also has laser, and Wolf is just a top tier high range character in general. That's why I'm putting Wolf right here. Probably unfavorable, but I want to put in losing, but I'll put in unfavorable because it's probably not quite as bad. Yoshi, I just don't even worry about it. Just don't play this character. Don't play against the Yoshi, okay? That's my pro tip. Yes, okay, I may have been hinting at this, but Young Link is oppressive with... Yeah, Young Link's pretty oppressive with his ability to keep Steve out. It's just difficult to deal with, and you kind of have to try your best. That's what it comes down to. Zelda's able to create a wall and is able to kill pretty early, which in of itself is enough to make it a hard matchup to deal with. ZSS is able to camp out Steve a little bit, but at the same time, ZSS is kind of light. If they're flip kicking a lot, you can up smash and catch that quite often, and it's not the worst matchup in the world online, at least. I would need to play offline more to really have an opinion, though. Wario will do Wario things. Wario, I'm going to have to put at an unfavorable matchup because of all of his precedence and everything that he's able to do. His priority, his ability to have a really good movement, good burst options, not get edge guarded. However, Wario just doesn't have the same walling out tools that a lot of these characters, and Wario can't get comboed. Joker's is able to combo Steve so incredibly hard. And then once Arsene comes out, he has a reflector on top of that, and you just aren't having a good time there. Hero, with a lot of his spells, is able to wall out Steve, and you are left to deal with the consequences. He also has a sword that can outrange Steve, and it gets tricky. Banjo, once again, can kind of wall out Steve. And this makes it difficult for you to play the matchup. But that's kind of typical of the Banjo matchup, but Steve just isn't able to get in like he needs to be able to do well here. Harry, similar to the Shotos, he's not really similar to the... Terry gets edge guarded pretty hard here. If they don't sweet spot the ledge, you can down smash or down tilt, and they struggle against that. Terry also relies on a lot of hitting your shield, not a lot of grabs, so you can end up getting some up tilt combos off that or up smash combos, and he dies, you know, average amount of time. It's just a pretty easy matchup. Now, Byleth has a ton of range, but doesn't have the same speed as a Lucina or a Marth or a Roy. And so Steve is able to get in a little bit better with minecart and with tools like that, but it's still not super easy because of the range that Byleth has. Now, Min Min is pretty tricky to deal with because of the massive arms. There's not really much getting in against Min Min. You can try, but Min Min also has a reflector, which makes the matchup just that much harder. And lastly, we have Sephiroth. Now, Sephiroth is pretty slow and can get comboed and is kind of light, but he is a massive sword, which makes it similar to Byleth, honestly. Well, if you have any disagreements, let me zoom out real quick. If you have any disagreements, let me know. I think that this is a pretty well developed chart. And if you want me to go into any more detail, I can in the comments. Just ask questions, and I hope to see you guys again soon.